Okay, we're in Denver, Colorado. It's May 20th, 1997. I'm here with Clayton Wilcoxson.
Wilcoxson.
Yes,
Mm-hmm.
and he's from the 56th Infantry. And I'm Victoria Ekegren, and this is Fabling Christian University, the History Department. First of all, I'd like to start talking about your parents. What do you remember about your dad?
Well, my father was 5'6". He worked for the CNS Railroad for years. He was in World War One. He was a very good Mason. He was Secretary of the Lodge. In fact, that was his life, just about. But he was a great guy, and he smoked Camels. Those were real good, and died of emphysema, and not too pretty, But he was a fine man.
What do you remember about that depression? How did that affect your
depression? Well, I started cutting lawns and ditching lawns, and in general working when I was about 12 years old.
And when were you born?
1925.
1925.
Mm-hmm.
So how did that depression affect you and your family?
Well, Dad was still working for, obviously, the railroad. He was cut down to about 3 days a week, as I recall, and money was very short. So by working myself, I was able to supply myself with a Coke or an ice cream cone or something like that,
yeah,
occasionally. But I remember it was a good life. I didn't suffer at all,
yeah,
nor did my mother and father. Enjoyed school for the most part, and in general, I did not suffer during the Depression, fortunately. A lot of people did.
Do you have any brothers and sisters?
No, I was the only child. Yeah.
Did your dad talk about World War One a lot?
Not too much. No, he was he got caught by that flu epidemic, and half of his division had shipped out. Half of it had, and half that hadn't. He caught the flu. He was in that half. So he went over in the Army of Occupation. The war was over by the time he went over there, fortunately.
So how did the depression affect him as a person? Did he?
I don't think it bothered him too much. Well, it had to bother him, but he made a living where we had clothes, shelter, and food, so that wasn't too bad in that sense. We didn't have any luxuries, and anything I wanted, the first bicycle I worked for and saved my money, and he bought it for me for Christmas with my money.
Did your dad ever talk about? Did he think that there was going to be another war? Or was there such
No,
talk at home?
he never did. Mm-mm. He never did.
Do you remember? I know you were very young, like when 1939 comes around, when Hitler, starts invading Poland and other places.
That made an impression on me. Yes.
Like what kind of impression?
One of interest, you might say. And I remember that it was very remote for me, I never thought I would be involved in it until Pearl Harbor hit. And by that time, of course, I was, I think, a junior in high school. And I can remember my father and I had gone to a show downtown at the Paramount Theater. I even remember the theater. And when it came out of the theater at the end of the show, the headline was on the street, Pearl Harbor. And I looked at Dad and I said, do you suppose it'll last long enough for me to get into it? Dad said, I hope to God not. But it did.
It did. So when did you decide to join?
To join the Army? I enlisted about a year, well, shortly after that, when I was it was before I was 17. I was 16 when I enlisted, but it was then it was a situation of being you know, not eligible for call-up, and I got into the ASTP program in high school.
Okay.
Took the test there. So when I graduated from high school, which was in June '43, I was called up on active duty. Then I think it was August. Yeah, of '43.
So was your dad for you leaving, or what did he think about it?
He, knowing what was possibly ahead of me, he was very glad it was ASTP. So he wasn't too concerned at that time. But of course, when they closed down ASTP, he became quite concerned.
And when did they close it? How far? You said you joined the ASTP right after high school?
I was eligible for ASTP.
Okay.
And I went from ASTP, pardon me, I went from basic training to ASTP. And I was at Camp Roberts, California for basic, went into ASTP, went to New Mexico A&M, same as Bill.
Okay. So did you know Bill back then?
Yes, I did. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
What do you remember about those early days in basic training?
Oh, that was something else. It was winter, and late fall, early winter. We got out of ASTP, I think it was in January, or pardon me, basic training in January. And it was at Camp Roberts, California, and I thought, sunny California. And I was colder there than I'd ever been in Denver, Colorado. Rainy, cold, you know, damp. It was a good experience, though. I enjoyed basic training.
What type of stuff did you learn in basic training?
Infantry.
Infantry.
Mm-hmm.
Do you remember any of your other friends, people that you met?
In basic?
Yeah.
Yeah, I can't remember their names. There's one Italian guy from Denver that was quite a kick, but and then I met Walt Raven. He was from Philadelphia, and they were about the only ones I remember. Bill Coop, he was 38 years old, so I remember him.
So were most of the guys in basic training, were they from ASTP programs too, or?
No, we all went to basic training, whether we were going to ASTP or combat or whatever it might have been. So
was there a tension between different age classes, or?
Oh, no. Mm-hmm. No. But old Bill, he was quite a guy. He was 38 and I was 17. And, by golly, he tried to keep up, and he did. So that was one thing that impressed me about Bill Coop.
So from California, you went to where?
Went to well, Santa Rosa. Previous it's sort of an introduction to ASTP, so to speak. We were only there a couple of months, and then we went to New Mexico and
So what
Las
did you
Cruces.
do? Yeah, what did you do at Santa Rosa? What kind of instruction? Things?
Santa Rosa.
Yeah.
It was just you know, they were it was stuff we'd taken in high school, really.
Okay. Just like repeat of
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
high school.
Algebra and so forth.
Okay. So then, where did you go afterwards? Where else in New Mexico? Came down here, La Cruces. Yeah.
Yeah.
And what did you do over here?
Over where?
In La Cruces.
In Cruces?
Yeah.
Well, we started the ASTP training. That lasted, I think, I don't know if Bill told you or not, I think about 3 months. And they closed the program down, shot us into the 12th bomber. All ASTP was closed down.
So what did you feel about that? Like what were you thinking?
I was kind of glad. Felt that, by golly, now I can get into combat, you know. Okay. Not knowing what it was all about at all, it sounded kind of neat thing to do. And we of course had I don't know, what do you want to call it a hatred of what Hitler was doing, what Mussolini was doing, and what Tojo was doing. And so we thought we'd save the world, I suppose.
What would your dad think about, you?
He was a quiet man, and he never said too much about it. My mother told me one time that she woke up, they were in bed, she woke up and Dad was laying there crying. And she said, "What's the matter?" You know, he said, "Well, I'm worried about Clay." That's when we were in combat.
Yeah. So did you write to your parents to keep in contact with
Oh,
them?
yes.
All the
Mm-hmm.
time?
Sure.
And they wrote to you? And
Oh, yes.
did you have a girlfriend back already at this early stage?
Oh, yeah.
What was her name, Jared?
Well, I had actually 2 of them. There was Charlotte and there was Berta, Saints. And they were high school type.
So little romances you kept going through.
At least through the war.
What do you remember most about basic training?
As I said, the cold weather, what would I say? The fact that we're learning how to fight, you know, and so forth, and at 17, that's pretty exciting. So, basic training, and I was in real good physical shape then too, that helped. And it was a good experience. You know, we learned how to take care of ourselves, how to fire various weapons. And possibly what combat really was like. You can't really experience that though until you get into it, I found out.
How's that camaraderie between the college kids kind of coming in, or you coming in?
Into the 12th?
Yeah.
Well, we were mostly cut out. The 12th was mostly made up of ASTP when we went in.
Okay. And where did you join in? Did you come in?
I went in from New Mexico A&M.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And you went down to Camp Barkley?
Camp
right?
Barkley.
Did you have what kind of friends had you made already back in New Mexico?
Oh, good ones like Bill Funky. You just talked to him.
Yeah.
And I honestly can't remember too many of the guys in that, but I had a good time there too. Didn't study much.
What do you remember? What do you remember about the ride to Abilene? Do you remember anything?
The ride to Abilene?
Yeah.
Well, this is kind of interesting because my grandfather died about that time. So I got a pass to come out here to his funeral. Meantime, the guy who's from A&M went on down to Barkley. So I was on my own. When I got back to A&M, I got my train ticket and put on a train and sent to Abilene by myself.
How's that traveling?
Well, looking out of the window at West Texas, there was sagebrush and more sagebrush and scrub oak.
What do you remember about the town compared to Denver? If you compare it, like what were your things when you saw Abilene, the city?
The city of Abilene?
Yeah.
When I finally, I remember to this day, a city or town of 70 churches and 7 theaters. And it was dry. Is it still? No.
In some ways, I guess it is.
Yeah.
How about the people in Abilene? What do you remember about that?
I had very little contact with them. We'd go into a show maybe, and right back out to Camp Barkley. Got to Dallas a couple of times. Yeah.
Would you
Pretty
go
good.
see in Dallas?
Well, that was pretty good. It was wet.
It was good.
Yeah.
So did you guys used to go on the weekends? How many times do you think you guys had a chance to go?
Oh, about 2 times, I think, time we were there.
And what kind of housing did you have in Abilene and Camp Barkley?
Camp Barkley?
Yeah.
They were, what you couldn't even, well, they were barracks, but they were single story. And would house, did they house the entire country? I don't think so. We had about perhaps company to barracks, and yeah, that's about all I remember about them too. But
How many men did you have in every? How many people did you live with together?
well, let's see. About I'm guessing now. If it were a company, we had 4 platoons, and each platoon had about 3 times 7, 21, about 80 guys.
80 guys.
Yeah, that's
Well,
a
in
guess.
each barrack you had.
Yeah,
About 80.
perhaps.
Okay. So in your room, did you have rooms? How many people did you share rooms with?
No, it was just open.
Just open.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So you, as a youngster coming in, like when these guys had already been, what kind of experiences did you have to go through being so young and being a newcomer?
Well, there were, as I said, most of us were young, and most of us were newcomers when we got there, because as I recall, they sent the Camp Campbell guys down to South Pacific, and then we remanned the 12th Division, basically. There were just cadre left, and they trained us.
What kind of training did you go through?
Well, I started out in the 12th Combat Command B, I think it was. And the training I got there was driving a light tank, and driving a half-ton truck, and I tangled kind of with the lieutenant there and requested transfer to the infantry.
Why did you do that?
Hmm?
What did you said that you wanted to transfer?
Yeah.
Yeah. Why did you want to transfer? Or you?
Yeah, well, the lieutenant I didn't see eye to eye. So I decided I better get out of there. So I did.
So, apart from this one lieutenant, how did you like the other lieutenants? And
Oh, they were fine. They were good. Company commander was great, and the other lieutenants were good.
what were good qualities about them?
They were friendly, they were fair, and if you messed up, well, you heard about it, but that was fair too.
Do you remember anybody in particular?
Not in CCB, I don't know.
Where would be the first one you remember? Like,
Well, yeah, in the 56th, in our platoon, I remember old Joe Day. He's dead now, and then there was Tex, and I never knew him by any name but Tex, but he could make the dice do whatever he wanted to do. And I lost a little money to him, but he was a nice guy. Captain Fairburn, our company commander, he was great. And
what made him great?
well, he was fair, and particularly in combat, he was better than great. He was wounded at least a couple of times, and Herlesheim went out and pulled a guy to his back, and he was just a great leader. He was a man that you would follow.
So when you guys were in the barracks, do you get news about the war in Europe and what's going on there? How does the news receive you? Like what do you think about it?
We, as I recall, we get a data or a weekly or a monthly newsletter type of thing, and they would tell us, and we had access to radios, of course, and newsreels and that sort of thing. Those were our sources of information, basically.
But how did this news affect you? Were you guys anxious to go, or what kind of emotions did you have?
Yeah, we were anxious to go. We had spent quite a bit of time. It was, as I recall, something like March to October in training. We thought, gee, we're through training. Let's get over there and get this thing over with. I think that's what most of us felt like. And sure enough, we got over there.
So what do you remember about the day when they told you that you guys were leaving from Abilene?
A lot of not anxiety, but anticipation, so to speak. And they loaded us on the train, took us to Camp Shanks, New York, and off we went.
What do you remember about the train ride?
It was long. Golly, I can't remember how long it lasted. It could have been 4 or 5 days, and I remember reading a rather racy novel by, I can't think of his name, he was Southern. But in those days it was rather racy, you know. So I got that read. And we got to Camp Shanks, and we were there staging for probably at least a week. It's more than a week. Because we got a pass to New York City. So it's been a couple of weeks we were at Camp Shanks, and then we shipped out.
What did you do at Camp Shanks? What are things, last minute things?
Last minute things, cosmoling the weapons, getting them ready to move, you know, ourselves ready to move, getting their shots.
Do you remember any conversations that you had with anybody at this time?
No, I really don't.
Well, this is about the time where you guys changed the commanding general when Brewer steps down. Do you have any recollection?
I don't. I really don't.
That's something that never.
Yeah, never affected me at all.
But you don't remember any rumors or anything. You know why? You know, what was your personal opinion of about him being relieved?
Who?
General Brewer, why he was relieved.
I don't remember him at all.
When you guys got leave to go to New York, what'd you do? Is this kind of like last minute and freedom before it's time to?
No, we packed our Eric's bag and loaded it on the train and took off.
So how did you ship? And can you describe the ship that you went in?
Yeah. Oh yeah, that was the Empress of Australia. Never forget that. We were heavy weapons platoon and on board ship all the way across. We stood midnight watch on the anti-aircraft guns and the heavy weapons that they carried for for protection against the aircraft and submarines and that sort of thing. And that was a lot of fun. It was cold, wet. But that lasted until several months.
Well, what kind of things did you do on the boats over?
Going over?
Yeah.
Slept and did the watch and ate.
How did it feel inside? Just.
Well, it was. Oh, guys, shall be glad when this watch is over. You know, it was just a routine thing. That was, golly, I'm glad in the heavy weapons I can stand out here in the cold and rain and wind.
Did you think about the submarines there in the
Yeah.
water?
Mm-hmm.
Do you want to tell me about that?
I thought about them, and we had ships all around us. It was convoy, of course. And I thought, hey, this is good. We've got these ships protecting us, too. That helped.
But you were never worried more about...
No. When you're 17 and 18 and 19, you feel fairly indestructible.
Okay. Do you remember any conversations at all that you had on the ship about just coming closer?
Not really.
No. Okay, where'd you guys land? Where'd you guys come to harbor? Do you remember seeing? Do you remember seeing the harbor and stuff? Can you describe, just how it was seeing land again?
Well, golly, this is England, huh? And I think it was rainy and stormy when we got there, and I can't remember the ports. But we landed in western port in western England, and took. I don't know. Did they ship us out of there in trucks or train? I can't remember now. Well, we went to Camp Tidworth Barracks. It was in England.
Did you have any encounters with Englishmen?
Oh God, did we?
Okay, so tell me about this one.
Well, I'll tell you, one of the the things that really sticks in my mind. From Tidworth, we go into Salisbury for an evening of rowdiness, so to speak, drinking warm English brew, and that is, if you didn't drink too much, you were all right there. Otherwise, you got fairly sick. And anyway, we would have our rounds of the brews there, load up on the 6-bys again, and come back to Tidworth Barracks. Point of my story is, our 6-bys were loaded with us, and pack into those. And every night that we were in Tidworth, or Salisbury, for example, we'd always have 2 or 3 or 4 English soldiers that were about a mile, 2 miles camped from Tidworth Barracks. And they say, hey Yanks, will you give us a ride? And sure, we'd give you a ride. And we'd pull them in, pack them in again, and take them back up. Well, this one time, a buddy of mine, I can't remember who it was, but we decided we got a pass into Tidworth, so we decided we'd hitchhike. So we would got out on the road. There were some English lorries going by, and we'd say, hey, you know the ride? And they'd give us the finger. About that time, I started changing my mind about the British. And so I wasn't too happy with them. And particularly, and I'll drag Gary a little here, when we got, I was in the hospital at the end of the war in Cherbourg, and I'll bet you I saw 200 British GIs go through there. Now, one of them was wounded, battle fatigue. So I don't have too much sympathy toward the British.
How did that? So did you like the British people in itself at first, and then?
Yeah, I did. I met some nice British people. They aren't all bad. They can't be all bad. But in general, they're jerks.
So were you kind of relieved to leave England then?
Yes. Mm-hmm. We got out of there, and when I landed in, where did we land? Cherbourg? Went to our staging area there in Alfay, or wherever it was, France, and moved into combat zones from there.
How did it feel coming closer to combat zone then?
Well, at that time, the weather started turning real bad too. It was rain, 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 mud, 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 and cold, cold, cold. And I think most of us thought more about the environment than we did combat. I remember sitting on the back of a medium tank, there were about 4 of us on the deck, and trying to stay warm. Our tanks got stuck. Our half tracks got stuck. I think the environment was the worst thing, until we got to Hildesheim.
So what do you remember about this? You're in France now. How are the French compared to the British? How are they receiving you compared to the British?
I'm sorry, but I don't have much use for the French either.
Why not?
They were unfriendly. frankly, they were. Well, they'd have a manure pile in front of their house, you know. It was like a difference of day and night going from France to Germany, so to speak. Germany was clean. It was sparkling clean. And in general, the German populace treated us better than the French did.
Why do you think that was?
Well, I think a lot of the Germans were glad to see us. They were glad the war was finally over. A lot of the general populace side, well, I don't think they really supported Hitler. They did it out of fear. And after everything was over, you know, and we were an army of occupation then, in general, we were treated in a very friendly manner by the Germans, general German populace, so to speak. We wouldn't take an assessor for a prisoner, so there's that faction. After our first encounter with them, the Wehrmacht. Well, I was hauled into the aid station by two Wehrmacht soldiers that had thrown their weapons away, fortunately.
And when was this?
Pardon?
When was this?
This was at Spire on the Rhine. I got hit there, and they took me back to the aid station. So that's a general opinion of a populace, if you will.
Yeah,
my own
yeah.
personal opinion.
Yeah. What do you remember about your first battle, first really encounter with the?
With the Germans?
Yeah, or just with the war, just with actually fighting.
Our well, first battle we went into, we were to capture this town. We stormed it, okay? Got in there, found out the Germans had evacuated. Now that was very fortunate. Our first, I guess, the battle that really sticks in my mind is Herlesheim. I'll never in my life forget that.
Do you remember anything before Herlesheim? Anything?
Yeah, we had general battles. At one place, and I can't remember where it was. We were a heavy weapons platoon, and we had 57 anti-tank rifles. They took those away from us and gave us 81 millimeter mortars, and those were kind of neat. And at this one particular battle, we took our whole platoon. We took our 81 mortars and put them on top of this plateau. And that's verboten. You put mortars down because they go up and over. See, but we faked the Germans out. I bet you for 4 or 5 days before they realized where our mortars emplacements were. And they finally found out and started blasting us off that plateau with 88s. And fortunately, that when they really started hitting us with it, I was about the only one in the platoon left on duty up there. So I was hauling ammo and mortars and stuff down the hill. And I remember that one very well. Here again, the cold and the wet, you almost felt like you wanted to be hit, you know, or at least wounded. You could get out of that. But so that was a memorable situation, and in fact, the Germans had taken a barn load of. There was a platoon that was staying in a barn down there, and they got captured. And good old Sergeant Vaught took us out to try to see where they went. He was our platoon sergeant at that time, and we went. He took us out, sat us down, and we all looked around. And I said, well, why are we sitting here? Why aren't we going somewhere and trying to find these guys? But we didn't. He took us back, and he later left us at Hurlesheim. I don't know what happened to him, but we never saw him again. He put us in this ditch, so to speak, and he says, okay guys, stay here and hold this, I'll be back. We never saw him again.
You never, to this day, know what happened?
No.
What, were you writing letters home to your parents still at this point, or?
Well, in combat you can't really write, and or don't feel like it. If you will, when we got back to a stage in the area, I'd write, you know.
Yeah. Did you receive letters too, like what?
Oh yeah.
What did your dad say in the letters at that point? Did you have any recollection?
I don't recall.
Do you remember that first Christmas away from?
Yeah, I sure do.
Okay.
Yeah, ate Christmas dinner under a 6-by. They were shelling us at the time.
Do you remember what you had for?
Yeah, turkey.
Turkey.
Mm-hmm.
Did you get any gifts or anything from home, or?
The only gift I remember getting from home, yeah, I got pictures of my mom and dad. After Hurlesheim, I had frostbitten feet, and they sent me to to a hospital there. And then I got a carton of cookies. So that's all I can remember.
How about your two girlfriends? Are you still married to them at this point?
Pardon?
Your two girlfriends from high school, are you still keeping in touch with them at this point?
I
or?
keep in touch with one of them, yeah. Mm-hmm. She still lives here, and the other one's in Atlanta.
Okay, let's move on to on the road again. You're just moving along. The war is affecting you. Like, how is Hurlesheim? What's the first thing that you remember? What's the first?
We were wiped out. We had cooks and half-track drivers in the foxholes. The big thing I remember is this one night. It was to a point where it was so cold, so bitter, that you could stand up in the foxhole and go to sleep, you know, standing. Even in that environment. And I'd gotten relieved there were two of us in a hole at the time. So the two of us had gotten relieved, and we'd gone back to the, I can't remember the name of the town, to get some sleep. Two guys replaced us in our hole there. When we got back out there, we found out that the crowds had come through. Those two guys were asleep. One of them was dead, and the other one was dying. And I thought, but for the grace of God, did it go out? You know. I remember that.
What do you think went wrong at Hurley's show?
Our intelligence.
Like what
They didn't realize what the Germans were really putting in there. It was what was the German general? God, I'm sorry. I can't think of his name. Very famous German general. Rommel. Pulled them out, brought them down to our area. After he tried to get through on the Bulge. They stopped him up there finally. So he pulled out of there, came to the Nancy area where we were, tried to break through there. And we were there for eternity. What, 2 weeks? And held him. And finally, like I say, we were down to track drivers and cooks. I guess they sent him in another division to help out. Well, I think that 17th came in, or 66th, one of the two. Well, I think it was the 17th came in. They got wiped out. Yeah, after us. Darn near wiped out.
So how exactly do you remember the maneuvers and stuff that you guys were told? Like, how did you move in to Herlesheim out of your battalion?
By foot.
Yeah.
Back of tanks.
How many people by foot did you have?
Pardon?
How many people by foot did you have?
Well, we had a battalion.
Okay, the whole battalion.
Yeah.
How many did you lose? Like, just.
Well, we lost. Like I say, we probably lost all of the 80% of the fighting infantrymen, and then the cooks and half-track drivers moved in.
What were your thoughts and feelings when you're seeing all your friends, whatever, around you? Like, what keeps you going at a point like this?
You blank out, or I did. Just blank out, and go from there. You fought and prayed and kept going.
What happened next here after this year?
Well, we were relieved by I guess the 17th or 66. I can't remember who relieved it. Bear with me, but we got sent back, got out of the area, and I had gone through this ditch I was telling you about. The crowds started dropping mortars in on us there. Fortunately, there was a thin film of ice and mud under that. The mortars didn't explode. But there was still some water in there, thin water, and I had just gotten shoe packs, and they got wet inside, and that was tough because I couldn't get them dry, and had to go for days with wet shoe packs. Ended up with, they called it trench foot or frostbitten feet. And I was to the point when it was all over there I could barely walk. So that's when they sent me based on song to a hospital. Yeah.
How long were you in the hospital?
I was there about a month.
About a month, and then you came back?
Yeah.
So do you remember Patton and everything that came on after here when you started moving really rapidly through Germany?
Yeah.
Tell me about that.
That was kind of fun. We started towards the Rhine and Speyer on that one.
Yeah.
And that's where I saw my first and heard my first jet airplane. We were, our column was moving out, or they had been moving out. And we were about in the middle of it. And we heard this, I heard this roar. And it sounded like a railway gun shell coming in. We were all ducking. I heard a couple of the track ring mount guns go off, but just short bursts, you know. And all of a sudden, comes this plane, and he drops 2 bombs, but they were 500 yards behind our column because he was probably the first bomb he ever dropped from a jet, and he was going so fast. he was a little behind us, and that's the first jet I ever saw. And I can remember sitting on top of this plateau, our whole doggone battalion.
And this is in France?
This is on the way to Speyer, Germany.
Okay.
And we sat up there on this plateau overlooking the Rhine Valley in Speyer. And watched the fighter pilots come in. Flight after flight after flight. And they were just getting the crowd's help there along the Speyer area, in fact, in the Rhine area there. It was a beautiful sight. And after they had dropped their loads, and we went, and they had been softened up. We started down to take Speyer. Got down there. It was the first time our platoon had been in reserve. So Henley and I, Henley, he's quite, he was quite a guy.
Tell me about it.
I'll get to him.
Okay.
He was a friend of mine. He was a bazooka. We had bazookas by then. See, they got rid of the 81 motors and given us bazookas. So we had stashed some snuffs in the half track there, and Henley and I proceeded to get royally soused, and by that time we had the Negro company, and that was I'm up to something on that too, but so Henley and I quietly passed out, enjoyed ourselves completely, and all of a sudden heavy weapons, come on, get out. And we piled out of the track, started up the road to Spire. There was a gun tower or something that the Germans had holed up in, and they couldn't dislodge them, and they were keeping us pinned down there. And it was the Negro Company, I guess, that was supposed to take that roadblock. That's what it was. And this was their first venture, I think, in combat too. And they weren't able to accomplish that, so we were called up too. And they sent the platoon that Henley was assigned to in to take the roadblock, or the squad rather, which they did. And we were, this was a raised road down like that, and the Negro guys were over there, and we were over here waiting for the roadblock to be taken. We'd move on. All of a sudden, here comes Henley running down the road. Not funny. Blood streaming from his throat, and helmet gone, and he had a carbine. Where he got the carbine, I don't know. He came running down there, and between the booze and the shot was getting hit. He was out of his head, and went down there and raised a little ruckus with the black soldiers. He was from the south. It was a bad show, really. I was laying there on the other side watching the road there. Our squad was. And they finally stopped Henley. You know, they got him down, calmed him down, and sent him back to an aid station. And by that time, the roadblock had been taken. We advanced, advanced on to take Spire. So the tankers, 714th was out there, and we all picked a tank and moved behind them and started into Spire. And the gunfire from Spire was pretty heavy. One of our guys was up on the deck of our tank, firing a .50 caliber, and he got clipped and he rolled off the back there, and he was all right. But he was clipped and he was hurt. We sent him back. And I had my bazooka strapped over my shoulder. My loader had loaded it. It was ready to go. And I turned to the right. And just as I turned to the right, the tank on the right got hit. And that's where a piece of shrapnel went right between my legs, caught both legs, caught my ammo carrier in the ankle. I turned around, and our tank was starting to back up. And I was about that, seemed that far from him, and I just jumped to the side and started rolling. And when I stopped rolling, I looked over, and the tank tread about this far from me, and he ran over the shell in my bazooka, and then it had gone off. So I was a very lucky fellow, in other words. But that was the type of thing I remember.
Yeah. So you were badly wounded here?
I was wounded there, and my carbine was gone. I don't know who took my carbine. So I had a Bowie knife in my boot. That's all I had. So anyway, I started dragging my leg back toward where I thought the aid station might be, or whence we had come. And I looked over, and here come two Wehrmacht. No weapons. And they carried me into the aid station. So that's one experience I remember very, very well.
What do you remember about Patton?
We were in, well, that's where we were in his army when we went to Spire. I remember Patton as a could handle tanks. I mean, he was a genius in his own way. I admired him very, very much.
What did you think about the rapid movement that he forced you guys to just move so quickly? What did you think about that?
That was good. That was good. We raced down the Autobahn. Where in the heck was that? Oh, that was after the war was over. I'm sorry. And we were on the Autobahn going into Munich, I think. And you could look back into the forest along there, and the Krauts had dug out areas. You've probably heard this, where they parked their Stukas and their fighter planes, you know, and they were completely camouflaged, and they were using the Autobahn for a runway. Clever devils. I remember that very well. That was good.
So what do you think would have happened if you guys would not have moved so quickly through Germany into the rain?
Well, there would have been a lot more bloodshed.
Do you think that this is the best? How in a way was this the best way, to go about it?
You mean in ending the war?
Yeah, no, like in Patton's strategy, like.
In his strategy?
Yeah, and like moving.
Oh, move fast and hit hard. Yeah. And he did.
Yeah.
That was it. And Patch was good in that regard, but that was in the 7th Army, of course, and at that time we were fairly static, the snow, the rain, the Germans were bogged down, we were bogged down, so we weren't going anywhere at that time.
Did you guys know at all where you were going with all the secrecy going around? What
Pretty much so, yeah.
What did you know, and what did you not?
We knew what towns we were going into to take. We were supposed to know what we were facing. That Herdlesheim was an exception. The G2 was not too good at that time.
So you were carried away to the first aid. What happens next? You're wounded. What happened?
That's when I was flown to Paris and put in the hospital there, and saw what was the band leader that died? Oh, my memory. Anyway, saw his band, and then my wound reopened because I guess because we saw his band, and they shipped me back to Cherbourg to a hospital there. That's where the war ended, actually.
Do you remember the day? Can you tell me about the day when the war ended?
Oh, yeah. I was in Cherbourg, and I was laying next to a sergeant, ex-sergeant, first sergeant, from the 1st Division. And he was regular Army. And he's gone into North Africa, clear through North Africa, to Sicily, D-Day. Never been hit until this one time. And they were in a town. He was walking down the middle of the street, and he had two guys, a guy on his right, a guy on his left. And 88 came in. Blew the two guys on each side of him, smithereens, peppered him from his head to his heels, and he lived. He was not seriously wounded, but he was laying in the bunk next to me, and he was a private at that time because he had slugged us. Apparently a new lieutenant or something, and been broken in rank. So he and I were laying together there when the war ended. And they came out with the point system about a day or two later, you know, as for discharge. Hey, guys, his points were about that long. Mine went up to, I think my points were just enough to get me out at the very end of the point system. You know, I got out in, I think it was January of 46. So that's what I remember. I remember that sergeant. I remember the hospital very well.
What about the hospital do you remember?
Well, it was quiet, and it was nice. And at the end there, I had a room all to myself, and food was good, and the war was over.
Would you guys say when the war was over? Like, what was something you talked about?
We just looked at each other and said, "Thank God." You know.
When was your first contact with your parents after the war, and like how?
Well, I wrote him a letter. I went to Camp Lucky Strike. Well, I went back to the 12th. Okay, we were in then we were in the Army of Occupation at that time. That didn't last long because of my points and so forth. I was sent back. Infantry reorganization pending the invasion of Japan. We were about a day and a half out of New York coming back when the word of the first atom bomb hit. Thank goodness. And so that was a great relief to most of us on the ship because the invasion of Japan would have been bloodbath, I'm sure. So there was great relief there. We went to I can't remember the name of the fort that we got a steak dinner and a shower and all sorts of good things. You know, we were home. Boarded a train, headed for Denver.
How was it seeing your parents again? Oh, was your dad? What did he say when you saw him?
I don't remember. He had a big smile. As did my mother.
Do you remember the first thing you did, you know, just back into civil?
Partied a lot.
How old you were, like 25 or?
No, I was, let's see, I was 20 at that time.
20.
Yeah.
So what did you do after the war?
Well, I entered the 52-20 club for a while. I had a high school buddy, and he and I were going to go buy a Model A and go to Mexico City. But he was in the Navy. He didn't get out very quickly. So 5220 Club said, when are you going to go to work? What are you going to do? You know. So I figured I'd better do something. So I decided I'd go to CU, Colorado University. And that's what I did. Enrolled in
Would you major in? What did you study?
mechanical engineering.
Mechanical. So that's what you've done with your life? Or what do you-
Well, mechanical engineering for about 5 years, probably. While I was in Los Alamos, I worked mechanical engineering in Los Alamos for 5 years, 6 years, 7, 8, about 8 years. Mechanical engineering. I went from here in Denver, a manufacturing company, to Los Alamos 5 years, and then Martin Marietta Martin company up here.
Have you ever gone back to Europe after the war? You don't want to, or you just didn't have it?
No.
What do you think about the war impacted you most?
The cold, the snow, the rain, the death.
Were you ever around any concentration camps?
Yeah.
You were?
Went down to, what was it? Not Burkesco. Oh, heavens. It would... I can't think of it. Oh, heavens.
But were you with groups that liberated the camps, or?
I was in the hospital in Sherbrooke at that time. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. How has the 12th Armored Division Association affected you? When did you join them? Like, right after the war?
Just about after the war, yeah. Just about, yeah. I've been in a long time.
So you've been to a lot of reunions?
No.
No.
Been the one reunion, the one here in Denver. It was a lot of fun, though. But I love the newsletter, you know, Hellcat News.
Yeah.
It's great. And then seeing old Bill again.
Yeah.
I hadn't seen him for a long time. That was neat.
Tracy?
I had a question about, you didn't take SS for prisoners of war?
Well,
Yeah.
not after our first encounter with them.
Why not?
They didn't take us for prisoners. Basically. They were a very vicious, inhuman, if you want to say, and I guess we turned into the same thing, basically, when we fought the SS.
They were different than the
They were
regular Army
different.
German.
Oh, they were different.
I'm just curious.
It was kill or be killed.
You said you talked about a band leader that died. You saw his band when you were in the
Yeah.
hospital.
Yeah.
But it wouldn't have been. Was it like a big band?
Yeah.
Like Glenn Miller. Or something?
Glenn Miller.
Was it?
It was Glenn Miller. That's
Yeah.
what
The
I was
only reason I know is because your buddy said he saw Glenn Miller when he was in England, so I thought maybe.
Yeah, okay. And I can't remember who took the band over, but it was their first appearance after Glenn disappeared. And they put on a show there at the Paris hospital. It was great.
Do you know other stories? Anything we left out?
Nothing I can think of. I really spilled it here.
Yeah.
Yes. It's been a long time since I've thought of some of that stuff.
We sure do appreciate it.
Thank you.
More than
so
welcome.
much. Let's take some lightweight to fill out a form. That's not it. Here, you get this. Hold on, we need to get Dr.